My name is Ethan, and this happened during the fall of 2024 while I was driving through northern Oregon. I had already been on the road for almost 6 hours without taking a real break. The rain kept getting heavier, the highway was almost empty, and I could barely see beyond my headlights. Every few minutes I caught myself blinking longer than I should have, and I realized I was dangerously close to falling asleep behind the wheel. I pulled over, grabbed my phone, and searched for the nearest place to stay. There was only one Airbnb available. It was about 20 minutes away, deep in the woods, with very few reviews. I didn't think much about it. I booked the room, started the engine again. About 20 minutes later, the GPS told me to leave the highway and turn onto a narrow dirt road. Almost immediately, my phone lost its signal and the navigation map froze for a few seconds before coming back. The trees on both sides were so tall that they blocked almost every bit of moonlight. It felt like I was driving through a tunnel made entirely of darkness. There were no houses, no passing cars, and no signs that anyone had used this road in a long time. Then I noticed a small wooden sign standing beside the road. It simply read, "Raven Hill Cabin." I slowly turned onto the gravel driveway. The deeper I drove, the quieter everything became. Even the rain seemed to fade away. A strange feeling settled in my chest, as if someone already knew I was coming and had been waiting for me all along. The cabin looked much older than the photos I had seen online. The wooden walls were worn, the paint was peeling, and the porch light flickered every few seconds. I turned off my engine, and the silence around me felt unnatural. There were no insects, no birds, and no sound except the rain hitting the roof. I grabbed my backpack and slowly walked toward the front door. Before I could knock, the door slowly opened by itself. An elderly man with grey hair stood quietly in the doorway, holding an old brass key in his hand. He smiled, looked directly into my eyes, and said, "Welcome, Ethan. I've been expecting you." I froze where I stood. I had never told anyone my name, and I was certain the booking confirmation had never shown it to the host. At that moment, I realized something about this place wasn't right at all. I stood there for a moment, trying to convince myself that the old man probably knew my name from the reservation. It sounded like the only logical explanation. He stepped aside without saying another word, silently inviting me inside. The moment I crossed the doorway, an icy chill ran through my body. The cabin was far colder than the rainy night outside. The air smelled of old wood, dust, and something I couldn't recognize. In the corner of the living room, an old grandfather clock ticked slowly, and every tick echoed through the empty house. The old man pointed toward the staircase and calmly said, "Your room is upstairs, breakfast is at 7, and whatever you hear tonight, don't open the basement door." Before I could ask him what he meant, he turned around, walked into a dark hallway, and completely disappeared from sight. My room was surprisingly clean, almost as if someone had prepared it only a few hours before I arrived. A neatly made bed stood beside a small wooden table, and an old lamp filled the room with a warm yellow light. I locked the door, plugged my phone into the charger, and checked for a signal one more time. There was still nothing, not a single bar. I lay down, hoping to get a few hours of sleep before sunrise. I don't know how long I had been asleep when a loud scraping sound suddenly woke me up. It wasn't footsteps. It sounded like something heavy was being dragged across the wooden floor downstairs. The noise lasted only a few seconds before everything became completely silent again. Then I remembered the old man's warning about the basement door, and for the first time that night, I wasn't just nervous, I was terrified. I tried to ignore the sound, but my curiosity was stronger than my fear. I slowly unlocked my bedroom door and stepped into the hallway. The entire cabin was silent. The only light came from a weak lamp at the far end of the corridor. I walked carefully, trying not to make a single sound. Then I noticed something that immediately stopped me. The basement door was no longer closed. It was slightly open, just enough to reveal complete darkness beyond it. As I stared into the opening, a freezing cold breeze drifted up the stairs. A second later, I heard a soft whisper coming from below. It wasn't loud, but I heard every word clearly. "Ethan, come down here." My heart started pounding so hard that I could hear it in my ears. I was absolutely certain that no one in that cabin should have known my name. Every instinct told me to turn around, run back to my room, lock the door, and wait for morning. But I couldn't ignore the whisper calling my name. I took out my phone, switched on the flashlight, and slowly started walking down the basement stairs. With every step, the air became colder, and the smell of damp wood grew stronger. Halfway down, I noticed dozens of old black and white photographs hanging on the wall. They showed families, travelers, and children, all smiling in front of the same cabin. Then my flashlight stopped on the last photograph. My heart nearly stopped. It was a picture of me standing outside the cabin, wearing the exact same clothes I was wearing that night. I had never been there before, or at least, that's what I had always believed. My hands were shaking as I picked up the photograph and turned it over. On the back, someone had written today's exact date in faded black ink. I quickly looked through the rest of the pictures hanging on the wall. Every single one showed a different traveler standing in front of the same cabin. Some photographs looked decades old, while others seemed only a few months old. Then I noticed something that terrified me even more. None of those people ever appeared in another picture. Each person was photographed only once, as if the cabin had taken a final memory before they vanished forever. Just as I stepped away from the wall, I heard slow footsteps above me. They stopped directly over my head. Then 3 loud knocks echoed through the ceiling, followed by a whisper that quietly said, "Don't let him see you." I didn't wait another second. I ran up the basement stairs, grabbed my backpack, and rushed toward the front door. I pulled the handle as hard as I could, but it wouldn't move. It felt as if someone on the other side was holding it shut. Then I heard the old man's voice behind me. He spoke calmly, almost as if he already knew what I was going to do. "You're not the first," he said. "Everyone who comes here leaves something behind." I turned around, but the hallway was completely empty. Then the voice whispered one final sentence. "Tomorrow morning, they'll find your car, but they'll never find you." At that exact moment, the front door slowly unlocked by itself. I ran into the rain, got back into my car, and drove away without looking back. The next morning, I searched for the cabin online. The listing was gone. There was no address, no host,